If you're watching this right now, take a second to hit subscribe and tell me, have you ever trusted someone who ended up trying to take everything from you? Because that's exactly what happened to me. My name is Leticia Rowland, 65 years old, retired nurse, born and raised right here in Oakland, California. I thought I'd seen enough pain in my life to recognize danger when it walked into my house, but nothing prepared me for Jamal Pierce, my son-in-law. It started with one sentence. He stood in my kitchen, leaning against the counter I'd polished with my own hands for 40 years, and said, "If you don't like the way we live, Mama, maybe you should move out." Sevens, move out. From my own home. That sentence cut deeper than any scalpel I'd ever held in an operating room. You see, this house isn't just wood and paint. It's the life my late husband and I built together. Every brick holds a memory. I was about to learn what happens when a quiet woman decides she's done being silent. Stay with me, because this story doesn't end how you think. At first, I told myself Jamal was just stressed. He and my daughter, Samantha, had moved in for a few months after he lost his job at some tech startup down in San Jose. I didn't mind. Not at first. Family takes care of family, right? But months turned into seasons, and the man who once called me Mama started walking around my house like he owned it. He changed the locks for safety, rearranged my living room because it felt cluttered, even took over my mail, said he'd help manage my bills. I didn't realize until later that manage meant control. Samantha worked double shifts at the clinic, barely home, while Jamal spent his days investing, which really meant sitting on his laptop, whispering on calls he didn't want me to hear. The groceries got lighter, the fridge emptier, and when I asked about money, he smiled that smooth smile and said, "Don't worry, Mama, I've got everything handled." Sevens. But I started noticing the lies. The insurance papers I never signed. The bank emails I never saw. And that morning, when I found him in my study, rifling through my old medical files, something inside me went cold. He looked up, calm as ever, and said, "You're just forgetful, Mama. Let me take care of it." Forgetful. That word hung in the air like smoke. It wasn't just disrespect anymore. Something darker was taking root. And deep down, I knew. Jamal wasn't just living in my house. He was trying to own it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt different, like it was holding its breath. Every creak in the hallway made me flinch. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the cold cup of chamomile tea in front of me, thinking about how quickly kindness can turn into weakness when the wrong person walks through your door. My husband used to say, "Baby, protect your peace the way you protect your pulse. Without it, you're gone." I used to smile and brush it off. But as I watched Jamal walk around my home, talking down to me, treating me like a burden instead of the woman who raised his wife, I finally understood what Robert meant. Peace isn't something people give you. It's something you fight to keep. I looked around the house that night. The photographs, the old record player, the smell of cedar from the floors Robert built himself. This place was more than property. It was the story of my life. And if Jamal thought he could take that from me, he was about to find out how wrong he was. So I did something I'd never done before. I took out my phone, hit record, and whispered, Let's see what kind of man you really are. Sevens. That was the first night I started protecting myself. And if you're watching this, remember, sometimes strength doesn't look like shouting or fighting. Sometimes it's the quiet click of a record button in the middle of the night. If you're still here with me, go ahead and tap that like button. Because what happened next? It's the moment everything in my quiet little life flipped upside down. A week after that night, I sat Jamal and Samantha down in the living room. The same living room where I'd celebrated birthdays, prayed through hard times, and held my grandbabies. I told them calmly, I think it's time you two start looking for your own place. Sevens. Samantha looked shocked, her soft eyes darting to Jamal for help. But he just smiled, the kind of smile that hides poison behind charm. Mama, are you sure? You've been so forgetful lately. You might need us here. Sevens. That word again. Forgetful. The same word he'd used when I caught him in my files. It landed like a slap. I'm not forgetful, Jamal, I said. I'm just done being taken advantage of. Sevens. His tone changed, like someone flipped a switch. He leaned forward, voice low but sharp. You wouldn't last a week on your own, Mama. Let us handle things. It's better for everyone. Sevens. And right then, I saw it. The control, the manipulation, the calculation behind his every word. Samantha started crying, begging me to stop making this harder. My heart broke for her. She couldn't see what he was doing. Not yet. That night, he changed the Wi-Fi password, locked my bedroom door from the outside, by accident, and told the neighbors I was getting confused lately. He was building a story, a dangerous one. I didn't realize it then, but I was standing on the edge of a war I never asked for. So if you're watching this, and you've ever ignored that small voice inside whispering, something's wrong, don't. Trust it. It might just save your life, the way it saved mine. A few days later, Jamal changed his tone completely. He started acting gentle again, like the perfect son-in-law. He cooked dinner, brought me coffee in the mornings, even called me Mama Tish, the nickname my husband used to use. For a moment, I wanted to believe maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe we could find peace again. But peace was the bait. One afternoon, he told me a friend from his old company wanted to stop by. He's a therapist, Mama, Jamal said, all sweet and calm. I thought maybe you could talk to him, help with your stress lately. Sevens. When the man showed up, he had a polished smile, a clipboard, and eyes that scanned everything like he was taking inventory. Dr. Kenton Reeves. He introduced himself. But I noticed something. He never asked about how I felt. He asked about what I owned. How long have you lived here? Sevens. Is this house fully paid off? Sevens. Do you have family nearby who helps manage your finances? Sevens. Each question wrapped in concern, but every word felt heavy with intent. When I hesitated, Jamal jumped in. Mama's been a little forgetful lately. I just want to make sure she's okay. Sevens. Forgetful. Again. Doctor. Reeves nodded, scribbling notes that made my stomach twist. By the time he left, I knew this wasn't a wellness check. It was a setup. Jamal walked him out, closed the door, and smiled. See, Mama, we're just looking out for you. Sevens. That night, I overheard him whispering on the phone. Yeah, she'll sign it soon. Just say it's for medical coverage. Sevens. That's when it clicked. He wasn't protecting me. He was preparing me to disappear. The next morning, I got a visit I didn't expect. A knock at my door. 2 police officers and a young medic standing behind them. One of them said, "Mrs. Rowland, we got a call from your son-in-law. He's concerned you might be having some mental confusion." Sevens. For a second, my heart stopped. That's when I saw Jamal standing on the porch, his arms crossed, pretending to look worried. "Mama, please don't make this harder. We're just trying to help you," he said. Help me? They were about to take me out of my own house like I was a danger to myself. But I didn't panic. I'd spent 40 years in hospitals. I knew exactly how these things worked. So I smiled, calm and steady. "Officers, come in. Would you like some sweet tea while you decide if I'm crazy?" Sevens. They looked at each other, surprised. The medic asked me questions. Date, location, who the president was. I answered every single one, clear as day. I even recited the Lord's Prayer just to make a point. That's when one of the officers, a tall man with kind eyes, started to frown. "Ma'am, you seem perfectly fine to me," he said. He turned to Jamal. "What exactly made you think she was confused?" Sevens. Jamal's mask cracked just a little. He stammered, "She's been forgetting things, mixing up her meds, losing paperwork." Sevens. I looked right at the officer and said, "Funny thing, officer, I don't take any medication. But I did notice someone else going through my files." Sevens. The room went silent. After they left, the tall officer lingered on the porch. He handed me his card. "Name's Detective Carver Johnson. Call me if anything feels off." I've seen this kind of setup before. Sevens. That card felt like a lifeline, because deep down, I knew this wasn't just manipulation anymore. Jamal was building a case to steal my life. If you're watching this, remember, silence only helps the liar. If something feels wrong, speak up, even if your voice shakes. Trust me, it might be the only thing that keeps you free. That night, the rain came down hard, drumming against the windows like a warning. I sat in the dark, lights off, heart pounding slow but steady. Every instinct in me, the same instinct that had helped me save lives in the emergency room, told me something was coming. Around midnight, I heard Jamal's voice in the hallway. He thought I was asleep. I crept closer, careful not to let the floorboards creak. His voice was low, sharp, like someone who'd already decided how the story would end. "Yeah, she'll sign tomorrow. I've got the papers ready. Once it's done, the house goes into the trust under my name. No, she won't fight it. She trusts me." Sevens. My stomach turned cold. That trust he kept talking about. It was a weapon. He walked into the kitchen, still on the phone. "We'll get the evaluation done next week. Dr. Reeves will confirm the diagnosis. She won't even know what hit her." Sevens. That was the moment I stopped being afraid. I went back to my room, opened the drawer where I kept my husband's old tape recorder, and hit record. I whispered, "If you're going to take my life apart, Jamal, I'm going to make sure the world hears every piece of it." Sevens. The next morning, I called Grace Mbatha, my husband's old attorney. She listened quietly, then said just one sentence. "Keep recording, Mrs. Rowland. Don't confront him yet. Just gather proof." Sevens. And so I did. Every call, every whisper, every fake smile. For the next week, I lived like a ghost in my own house, watching, waiting, recording. I didn't know then that those tapes would become my salvation, and Jamal's downfall. I'll never forget the first moment I met Grace Mbatha. It was a gray Tuesday morning in downtown Oakland, the kind of day when the air feels heavy, like the city's holding its breath. I walked into her office with my purse clutched tight against my chest, my heart pounding louder than my footsteps. I wasn't sure what to expect. I only knew one thing. I was done being scared. Grace's office didn't look like any law firm I'd ever seen. There weren't any cold marble floors or stuffy leather chairs. Instead, the space smelled faintly of jasmine tea and old books. Framed photos of Black women, activists, writers, lawyers, lined her walls like silent witnesses to every battle she'd ever fought. When she looked up from her desk, her eyes met mine with the kind of steadiness that made my shoulders finally relax. "Mrs. Rowland," she said, standing to shake my hand. "I'm Grace Mbatha. I heard you've had a storm in your home." "Sevens." I let out a tired laugh. "You could say that. The kind that tears the roof off but leaves the walls standing." "Sevens." She smiled faintly. "Then let's rebuild it piece by piece." "Sevens." I told her everything. How Jamal and Samantha moved in, how he started changing little things, how that doctor showed up pretending to care. Grace didn't interrupt once. She took notes, her pen gliding like a scalpel cutting through truth. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "You've been living inside a setup, Mrs. Rowland. A slow, quiet kind of violence." "Sevens." Then I pulled the little black recorder from my purse. "I started recording him," I said, my hands trembling just a little. Her eyebrows lifted. "You recorded him. Good." She reached for the device like it was a treasure. People underestimate the power of a voice. Let's hear what your son-in-law sounds like when he thinks no one's listening. "Sevens." She played the first file. Jamal's voice filled the room. Smooth, calm, poisonous. "She's forgetful. She'll sign anything. Once the trust is done, the house is mine." "Sevens." Grace didn't flinch. She scribbled notes furiously, replayed sections, slowed down the audio. "He's too comfortable," she murmured. "He's done this before." "Sevens." When the last recording ended, the room was silent except for the hum of her laptop. Grace looked up and said, "Mrs. Rowland, this man isn't just a manipulator. He's a professional predator." "Sevens." She pulled out a thick folder labeled Open Investigations. Inside were photos of 3 other women. Evelyn Carter, 72, Rosa Daniels, 68, and Miriam Blake, 75. All widows. All with homes fully paid off. All victims of a man named Jamal Pierce. I froze. "You mean my Jamal?" "Sevens." Grace nodded. "The same name, same story. He changes a few details. Sometimes he's a financial advisor, sometimes a caregiver, but the outcome's always the same. He isolates them, discredits them, gains legal control, then drains their accounts, Each time, he moves on before anyone connects the dots. Sevens. My hands went cold. So this wasn't about my daughter at all. It was about me. Sevens. Grace met my eyes and said softly, "It was always about you." Sevens. I felt something shift inside me then. Not fear, not grief, but resolve. The kind of resolve that grows in women who have survived too much to back down now. Grace smiled knowingly. "You're stronger than you think, Mrs. Rowland. You've already done the hardest part. You believed yourself. Now it's time we make the world believe you too." Sevens. She handed me a cup of jasmine tea, her eyes burning with quiet fire. "We're going to build a case so solid, even the devil himself couldn't argue his way out of it." Sevens. And sitting there, across from that woman who refused to be intimidated by evil, I realized something. Maybe I wasn't the victim in this story after all. Maybe I was the beginning of its ending. After leaving Grace's office that afternoon, I sat in my car for a long while, the sound of Oakland traffic buzzing faintly in the distance. The world felt the same, but I wasn't. Somewhere between fear and fury, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't the prey anymore. I was the one setting the trap. Grace had said, "You can't fight him head-on. You have to make him believe he's still in control." Sevens. That's what manipulators thrive on. Control. So, I gave him exactly what he wanted. Or at least, I let him think I did. That evening, I came home and found Jamal sitting in the living room, scrolling through his phone, acting like he hadn't tried to destroy my life. "Hey, Mama," he said, with that same smooth smile. "You okay?" Sevens. I smiled back, calm and even. "Just tired, baby. You know, you were right about me needing to rest. I've been thinking, maybe it's time I let you handle more of the finances. It's hard to keep up." Sevens. He looked up, surprised and pleased. "You mean it?" Sevens. I nodded, my voice soft. "Of course. Your family. I trust you." Sevens. Those words rolled off my tongue like honey over glass, sweet and dangerous. Grace's words echoed in my mind. "Keep your face soft, but your eyes open." Sevens. Over the next few days, I became the perfect victim. I let Jamal believe he was winning. I laughed at his jokes, cooked his favorite meals, even asked for his help with online banking. I pretended not to notice when he peeked at my passwords or took phone calls in the backyard. Every move he made, I memorized. 2 days later, he came home with a manila folder tucked under his arm. "Just some legal stuff," he said casually. "House insurance updates, power of attorney, simple paperwork." Sevens. I played my part perfectly. "All right, baby," I said, reaching for my reading glasses. "You just tell me where to sign." Sevens. What he didn't know was that Grace had given me a pen with a micro camera built into the clip, recording video, audio, and every subtle move of his smirking face. As I signed each page, he hovered over me, whispering, "You're doing the right thing, Mama. This will make everything easier for you." Sevens. I smiled. "Oh, I know it will." Sevens. Inside, my pulse thundered like a drum. On the outside, I stayed still, steady, quiet, unbroken. Later that night, I took that pen straight to Grace. She plugged it into her laptop, and together, we watched the footage. Every lie, every manipulation, captured in perfect clarity. He signed his own confession, Grace said, shaking her head. This is gold. Sevens. But the plan wasn't over. Grace warned me. He'll get bolder now. When people like him think they've won, they always overplay their hand. That's when we strike. Sevens. So I kept pretending. I let him take the car, to run errands. I let him use my phone to pay bills. I even let him tell the neighbors that he was helping his poor mother-in-law with her fading memory. Sevens. Let them believe it. Let him believe it. Because when the fall came, it would be from so high he'd never recover. The night before it all unraveled, Jamal sat across from me at dinner, toasting a glass of wine. "See, Mama," he said, smiling that smug smile. "I told you everything would work out once you trusted me." Sevens. I clinked my glass against his, looking him dead in the eyes. "You're right, baby. Everything's working out exactly how it should." Sevens. He grinned, thinking he'd won. But deep down, I knew. He'd just walked straight into his own grave, and I'd handed him the shovel myself. A few nights later, the house was wrapped in that kind of silence that makes your skin tingle. The kind that comes before something breaks. I was in my room, pretending to be asleep, when I heard the faint creak of the floorboards just outside my door. Then, his voice. "Yeah, she signed everything," Jamal whispered into his phone. "By Friday, it'll all be done. The house deed, the accounts, it's all under my name now. Once she's declared incompetent, we'll move her out. Yeah, I told her it's for her own good." Sevens. I felt my stomach twist, but I stayed still. He was pacing, confident, like a man on top of the world.
"After that, we move the funds. Run them through the shell company, then to Dr. Cole's foundation. They'll launder it clean in 2 weeks.
Sevens. That name, Dr. Cole, hit me like cold water. Grace had mentioned her, the so-called doctor, running an elder care firm that was really a front for human theft. And Jamal was working directly with her. I eased the recorder from under my pillow and whispered, "Keep talking, baby. Just keep talking." Sevens. By the time his call ended, I had every word. Every damning sentence. I wanted to scream, to confront him, to make him feel the rage that had been boiling in my veins for months. But Grace's voice echoed in my head. "Don't give him emotion. Give him evidence." Sevens. So I waited. The next morning, I met Grace at her office. My hands were shaking when I handed her the new recording. She put on her headphones and listened, expression flat and unreadable. When she finally looked up, her voice was quiet but fierce. "We've got him. And not just him. This ties the entire network together." Sevens. My heart pounded. "What happens now?" Sevens. She leaned forward. "Now we call the FBI." Sevens. 2 days later, Agent Lillian Moore joined the case officially. Grace introduced us in her office, and I'll never forget the way the agent looked at me. Not like a victim, but like a partner. "Mrs. Rowland," she said, shaking my hand, "you've already done the hard part. Now it's time to close the trap." Sevens. That night, I came home to find Jamal in my kitchen, sipping coffee like nothing had changed. He flashed that slick grin that used to fool me, but now only made me feel disgust. "You seem tense, Mama," he said lightly. "You still worried about all that paperwork?" Sevens. I smiled. Oh, no, baby. I'm feeling better than ever. Sevens. He laughed, leaning back in his chair. See?
Because right then, FBI agents were sitting 2 houses down in an unmarked car, listening to every word through the bugs they'd planted that morning. He stood, stretched, and said, "Good. I knew you'd come around. You're too smart to make trouble."
Sevens. I smiled again, sweet and slow. Oh, I don't make trouble, baby. I just finish it. Sevens. He laughed, thinking it was a joke. But I wasn't joking. That night, when he went to bed, I stepped outside onto the porch. The air smelled like rain and magnolia blossoms. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled.
And for the first time in months, I didn't feel fear. I felt anticipation. The next morning would be Friday. The transfer day. The day Jamal Pierce finally learned that sometimes the quietest woman in the room is the one holding the detonator.
Friday morning came dressed in sunshine, but the air felt heavy, thick with something waiting to happen.
I woke up before dawn, brewed a pot of coffee, and stood by the kitchen window watching the street. I knew the FBI van was parked 2 houses down, disguised as a plumbing service truck. Agent Moore had told me, "Keep calm, stay in control. Let him walk himself right into the fire."
Sevens. By 8 o'clock, Jamal came downstairs whistling, clean-shaven, wearing that blue shirt he always put on when he wanted to look respectable. "Morning, Mama," he said, pouring himself coffee.
"Big day, huh?"
Sevens.
"Big day," I repeated softly, watching him move around my kitchen like he owned it. He had no idea the house was wired with tiny microphones and hidden cameras. Every word he spoke, every smirk, was being recorded. He sat at the table, opened his laptop, and said casually, "Once the bank finishes the wire transfer, everything will be official. You'll be listed as the beneficiary, but I'll manage the accounts for you.
Just easier that way." Sevens. I sipped my coffee and smiled. "You've thought of everything, haven't you, baby?" Sevens. He looked up, that charming grin spreading across his face. "Of course. You don't get far in life by being careless." Sevens. "Oh, I believe that," I said, setting down my mug. "But you know what else they say. You don't get far in life by underestimating the wrong woman." Sevens. He frowned, confused. "What's that supposed to mean?" Sevens. "It means I know, Jamal," I said evenly. "I know about the fake doctor, the forged signatures, and the other women. Los Angeles, Portland, Sacramento." Sevens. His jaw tightened. "You've been talking to people you shouldn't, Mama." Sevens. "I've been listening to people I should have listened to a long time ago," I replied. For a moment, he stood perfectly still, then his mask cracked. The smile vanished, replaced by something colder, calculating. "You need to be careful with your words," he said quietly. "People might think you're confused again." Sevens. Confused? I let out a dry laugh. "The only one confused here is you, thinking you could come into my house and take what Robert and I built." Sevens. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "You don't know what you're messing with." Sevens. "Oh, but I do," I whispered. "The FBI does too." Sevens. His eyes darted toward the window, and I knew he finally noticed the black SUV parked across the street. Panic flickered across his face.
"You set me up," he hissed. "No,
I said softly. You set yourself up. I just hit record. Sevens. Before he could move, the front door burst open. FBI. Hands where we can see them. Sevens. Jamal spun around, but it was too late. 2 agents had him pinned before he could even speak. Agent Moore followed, calm and steady, reading him his rights as if she were reciting a prayer she knew by heart. He struggled, shouting, "This is a mistake. She's crazy. She doesn't know what she's saying." Sevens. I stood at the counter, arms folded, heart pounding but face steady. Funny, I said. That's exactly what you told the police about me. Sevens. As they dragged him out, he turned and glared at me, his voice low and venomous. You'll regret this, old woman. Sevens. I took a slow step forward and looked him dead in the eyes. No, baby, you will. Sevens. The door slammed behind them, and the sound echoed through the house. I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of months of fear, betrayal, and deceit. And yet, I felt lighter than air. Agent Moore came back in a few minutes later, smiling. He's done, Mrs. Rowland. The transfer documents, the recordings, it's all airtight. You just helped us take down a national operation. Sevens. I sank into a chair, exhaling deeply. So it's over? Sevens. For him, she said. For you. It's just beginning. Sevens. As the agents packed up their equipment, I looked around my kitchen, the same place where he'd once told me I was losing my mind, and whispered to myself, not anymore. Sevens. After Jamal's arrest, I thought maybe that was the end of it, that the storm had passed and peace could finally settle over my house again. But peace, as I learned, doesn't come that easy when evil runs deep. 2 days later, Agent Lillian Moore showed up at my door. She was a tall black woman in her 50s, silver streaks in her hair, eyes sharp enough to cut through lies. Mrs. Rowland, she said, this isn't just about your son-in-law. We've been tracking a whole network. Sevens. I invited her in. She laid out folders across my kitchen table, the same table where Jamal used to sip coffee and plot my downfall. Only this time, the evidence was against him. Each folder told a different story. Women from all over the West Coast. Retired teachers, widows, nurses, even a church secretary from Sacramento. Every one of them had been convinced they were losing their minds. Every one of them had been helped by a charming man who offered to handle their affairs. Sevens. And behind every story, the same signature. Dr. Marissa Cole. She's a licensed psychiatrist, Agent Moore said, flipping to a photo of a polished white woman in her early 40s. She runs a senior care consulting firm out of Los Angeles. Jamal wasn't working alone. He was one of her recruiters. Sevens. I stared at that picture. It was the same face I'd seen on a brochure Jamal once left on the counter. I remembered the slogan printed under her smiling portrait. Helping families protect their loved ones. The words made my stomach turn. Agent Moore leaned forward. She targets older people who live alone, usually widows with paid-off houses. Then she plants someone close to them, someone who can gain their trust. Once the paperwork's signed, the victim's declared incompetent. The assets get transferred. The person disappears into a care facility. Sevens. I felt my hands tremble. And you think she planned this for me? Sevens. Moore nodded. You were already on her list. Jamal just got there first. Sevens. The thought hit me like a cold wave. My name, somewhere on a spreadsheet, a target marked for erasure. But instead of fear, I felt something else. Fury. How do we stop her? I asked. Agent Moore smiled faintly. You already did, Mrs. Rowland. You exposed her operation. Now we finish it. Sevens. She packed up her files, then turned at the door. There's one more thing, she said. We may need your help again. Not as a victim, this time, as bait. Sevens. The rain outside had started again, soft and steady. I looked out the window, then back at her. You tell me when, Agent Moore, I said, because I'm done hiding. Sevens. The next morning, Agent Moore called me again. Her voice carried both urgency and calm, the kind of tone that told me this was no longer about just one woman's story. It was about all of us. Mrs. Rowland, she said, we're setting a trap, but we need you to be part of it. Sevens. I paused, hand tightening around the phone. You want me to play bait? Sevens. Only if you're ready. You'd be protected every second, but you're the only one Marissa Cole's network still believes is vulnerable. Oh. Sevens. I looked around my living room, the sunlight falling across the family photos, the little angel figurines Robert bought me years ago. For months, this house had been a battlefield. Maybe it was time to make it a weapon. What do you need me to do? I asked. Within 48 hours, the FBI planted a story in a local online paper. Widow recovers $400 in fraud case, now seeking safe investments. The idea was to make me look like fresh prey. It didn't take long. 4 days later, I got a call from a woman named Elaine Hartman, claiming she was part of a senior financial protection group. Mrs. Rowland, she said, her voice sugar-sweet. I work with families just like yours. My partner, Mr. Trevor Wade, is the best when it comes to helping retirees safeguard their money. He's in Oakland this week. Could he stop by? Sevens. I almost laughed at how neatly the bait was taken. Of course, I said warmly. He can come tomorrow afternoon. I could use some guidance. Sevens. The FBI spent that night wiring my entire house. Tiny microphones under the table, hidden cameras behind framed photos. Agent Moore walked me through every step, calm but firm. He'll sound polished, confident, maybe even kind, she warned. But remember, his goal isn't to help you. It's to own you. Sevens. When she said those words, something shifted in me. The fear I used to feel around Jamal was gone. What I felt now was purpose. The next afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table, a pot of tea steaming between 2 empty cups. Right on time, a silver sedan pulled into my driveway. A man in a tailored suit stepped out, briefcase in hand, his smile too smooth to be real. Mrs. Rowland, he said, as I opened the door. I'm Trevor Wade. Thank you for meeting me. Sevens. I smiled back, every nerve in my body steady as stone. Of course, Mr. Wade. Please come in. I've been expecting you. Sevens. Trevor Wade looked like the kind of man you'd trust with your life savings. Calm voice, polished shoes, the faintest whiff of cologne that screamed professional. But I'd seen enough charm to know when it was being used as a weapon. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, unfolding a leather folder filled with crisp documents. "Mrs. Rowland," he began, voice soft and reassuring. "I understand how hard it can be to manage your finances after what you've been through. That's why we specialize in asset protection, a program that ensures no one can ever take advantage of you again." Sevens. I nodded politely, pouring him tea, pretending to be grateful.
"That sounds wonderful," I said. "You know, after my son-in-law's betrayal, I just want to feel safe again."
Sevens. Trevor smiled, like a predator sensing weakness. "That's exactly what we provide. We just need your signature here. Temporary transfer of your assets while we create a protective trust. It's standard procedure." Sevens. I tilted my head, feigning confusion.
"So, my house, my retirement account, all of that would be under your firm's name for a little while?"
Sevens.
"Only for processing," he said smoothly. 2 weeks, at most."
Sevens.
He slid the paper toward me. My hand hovered over the line, pen shaking ever so slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. The cameras were rolling. The FBI van was less than a block away. I signed my name slowly, then looked up and smiled. There. All done.
Sevens.
Trevor's grin widened. "You've made a very smart choice, Mrs. Rowland. You're in good hands now."
Sevens.
"Oh, I know I am," I said softly. "Agent Moore, you can come in now."
Sevens.
For a second, confusion flickered in his eyes. Then realization hit like thunder. The front door burst open. "FBI! Don't move!"
Sevens.
Trevor's chair scraped the floor as he tried to stand, but 2 agents were already on him, pinning his hands behind his back. Papers fluttered everywhere, his perfect scam crumbling into chaos. Agent Moore stepped inside, her expression stone-cold calm. "Trevor Wade, you're under arrest for elder fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy."
Sevens.
He glared at me, venom in his eyes. "You don't know who you're dealing with, old lady."
Sevens. I met his stare without flinching. "Oh, I do. You're just another man who underestimated the wrong woman." Sevens. As they led him out, Agent Moore turned to me.
"We've got him, Mrs. Rowland. And with his records, we'll get the rest of them."
Sevens.
I exhaled slowly, watching the rain glisten on the cuffs around his wrists. For the first time in months, I felt light, like the storm had finally begun to clear. I thought the arrests would be the final chapter. The bad guys caught, justice served, life returning to something that looked like peace. But peace has a funny way of making you think the story's over, right before it drops the biggest truth in your lap. 3 days after Trevor Wade's arrest, Agent Moore called me back to the field office in downtown Oakland. She didn't sound excited this time. Her voice was low, careful. "Mrs. Rowland, we need you to see something."
Sevens. When I arrived, she slid a thick brown folder across the table. My name was stamped on the front in bold letters. Rowland, Leticia, case file.
I frowned. Why is my name on there?
Sevens.
Agent Moore opened the folder. Inside were copies of my medical records, mortgage statements, even photos of my house. Every page had notes scribbled in the margin, words like asset value, living alone, widowed, compliant personality. My stomach dropped. Where did this come from?
Sevens. We found it on Dr. Marissa Cole's computer. she said quietly. You were targeted 18 months ago, long before your son-in-law ever moved in. Sevens. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. You mean to tell me Jamal didn't just stumble into our lives? Sevens. Agent Moore shook her head. No.
He was sent to you. Recruited specifically. He met your daughter through an online community for Black entrepreneurs, a network we've since discovered Dr. Cole's team used to identify potential connectors to wealthy, elderly relatives.
Sevens. The air in the room turned heavy. Every memory, every smile, every Sunday dinner, every mama that had once sounded so loving, suddenly twisted into something rotten. Agent Moore kept going.
They planned everything. The move-in, the fake doctor, even the mental health call. Once the papers were signed, you would have been declared incompetent and relocated to a private care facility in Florida. You would have been sedated and cut off from your accounts. Sevens. My hands trembled. How long would they have kept me there? Sevens. She looked at me sadly. Until the money ran out. Or until you did. Sevens. I sat back, breath catching in my throat. My whole body shook. Not from fear this time, but from the weight of understanding just how close I'd come to disappearing. Agent Moore placed her hand gently on mine. You were supposed to be their biggest payout, Mrs. Rowland. Instead, you became their downfall. Sevens. I looked at her, tears burning behind my eyes, and whispered, Then I guess I owe it to every woman on that list to make sure they never rise again. Sevens. When the truth finally settled in, it hit harder than any betrayal I'd ever known. Jamal hadn't just broken my trust. He'd used my daughter, my baby girl, as the weapon. Samantha came to see me a week after the arrests. She stood on my porch like she didn't know if she should knock or turn and run. Her eyes were swollen, makeup smudged, shoulders trembling under the same jacket she wore the day she moved in with Jamal. I opened the door, but I didn't say a word. For a long moment, we just stood there, two women with the same blood, but miles of hurt between us. Mom, she whispered, voice cracking. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know what he was doing. Sevens. I wanted to believe her right away. I really did. But the wound was too raw. You lived here, Samantha, I said quietly. You saw what he did to me. You heard him call me forgetful. You watched him take over everything. And you said nothing. Sevens. She burst into tears. He told me you needed help. He said you were slipping. I thought I was protecting you. Sevens. That broke me a little. Because she did think she was helping. That's what manipulators do. They twist love until it looks like loyalty. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where she used to do her homework as a little girl. She looked so small now, so lost. He told me he was investing our savings. Mom, she said. Now everything's gone. The house, my job, my name. Sevens. I reached across the table, took her hand, and squeezed it tight. Baby, what you lost can be rebuilt. What he tried to take from you, your heart, your kindness, you can't let him have that too. Sevens. She looked up at me through her tears. How can you forgive me? Sevens. I sighed.
Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, sweetheart. It's about refusing to carry his poison any longer. I won't let that man live rent-free in my spirit another day. Sevens. We cried together then, not as mother and daughter divided by deceit, but as two women learning to breathe again after drowning in someone else's lies. Before she left, Samantha hugged me tight. "You're stronger than anyone I've ever known," she said. I smiled softly. "No, baby. I'm just a woman who finally remembered who she was." Sevens. 2 months after the arrests, the investigation had stretched from California all the way to Florida, Arizona, and New York. The deeper the FBI dug, the bigger the web became. Fake doctors, forged guardianship papers, shell companies, even corrupt lawyers on the payroll. And right at the center of it all sat Dr. Marissa Cole, smiling in every press photo like the poster child of compassionate elder care. Sevens. Agent Moore called me one morning. "Mrs. Rowland," she said, "we're taking her down today, and we want you to be there." Sevens. I didn't hesitate. "Tell me where to be." Sevens. They flew me to Los Angeles, where Marissa's so-called Senior Support Wellness Center stood like a marble monument to her crimes. From the outside, it looked respectable. White columns, flower beds, a bronze plaque that read, "Dignity in Care." But inside, it was a prison for people who'd done nothing wrong except trust the wrong person. I watched from the observation room as federal agents filed in, badges flashing, voices firm but controlled. Marissa was in her office, wearing a cream-colored suit, sipping coffee as if she didn't have a care in the world. When Agent Moore entered, she barely looked up. "Dr. Cole," Moore said, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit elder fraud, forgery, and unlawful imprisonment." Sevens. Marissa smiled, slow and deliberate. "You must be mistaken," she said. "I've dedicated my life to helping seniors." Sevens. Moore dropped a file on her desk. My voice came out from the audio recording inside. "You tell me when, Agent Moore, because I'm done hiding." Then Jamal's voice followed. "Once she signs, the house is ours." Sevens. For the first time, Marissa's composure cracked. She looked up at the glass divider, right where I stood, and I swear she knew I was there. Her lips moved, forming the words, "You ruined everything." Sevens. But I just shook my head. "No," I whispered. "You did." Sevens. Later that afternoon, Moore handed me a sealed folder. "You should see this," she said. Inside were names, 187 of them. Victims. People like me. Some still missing, some finally going home. I stared at the list, tears welling in my eyes. "They'll be free?" Sevens. Moore nodded. "Because of you." Sevens. That night, back in Oakland, I sat on my porch watching the sunset bleed gold over the bay. The cicadas hummed, the world quiet for once. And I realized something powerful. Justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about restoration. The headlines hit every news channel within hours. Nationwide elder fraud ring dismantled. Over 200 victims freed. My phone lit up nonstop. Reporters called, neighbors knocked, even strangers sent letters thanking me for standing up. But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt human again. Free. Jamal Pierce was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. When the judge read the verdict, He looked straight at me across the courtroom. No charm left, no smile, just a hollow man realizing his game was finally over. I didn't gloat. I just nodded. Because some victories don't need applause. Dr. Marissa Cole got 40 years. Her assets were seized, her practice dismantled, and her network exposed. I later learned that many of her so-called clinics were shut down. Their patients, people just like me, returned to their real families. Samantha sat beside me during sentencing, her hand gripping mine the whole time. She cried quietly, not just for the years she lost to that man, but for the version of herself she had to leave behind to survive. Agent Moore hugged me after court. "You changed more lives than you'll ever know, Mrs. Rowland," she said. "You gave people permission to speak up." Sevens. But it wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about what came after. The FBI returned every cent Jamal had stolen, and I used part of it to rebuild the parts of my home he tried to destroy. I repainted the walls, replaced the locks, and planted a new magnolia tree out front, the same kind Robert and I had planted when we first bought the house. As I watered that tree one quiet afternoon, I thought about all the women whose names I'd read in that FBI file. Some gone, some found, all forever changed. The world could call me a survivor if it wanted, but I preferred another word: restored. Months passed, and for the first time in years, my house felt like a home again. The silence that used to feel heavy now sounded like peace. I could hear the wind brushing through the magnolia tree outside, smell the coffee brewing each morning, and feel the sunlight spilling across the kitchen floor without the shadow of fear behind it. I decided I didn't want my story to end with survival. I wanted it to begin with purpose. So, with the help of attorney Grace Mbatha and Agent Moore, I turned part of my home into something new. The Rowland Center for Dignity, a small nonprofit offering free legal and mental health support for seniors who've been victims of financial abuse. Every Friday, my living room fills with laughter and conversation. Some of the women sit on the same couch where Jamal once planned my downfall, sipping sweet tea and sharing stories of how they fought back. Some are still healing, some are just beginning, but all of them, in their own way, remind me of why I'm still here. One afternoon, Samantha came by to help organize the files. She looked around the house and smiled softly. "You really turned it into something beautiful, Mom," she said. I looked at her. My daughter, no longer broken, but bloomin'. "That's what we do, baby," I told her. "We take what tried to destroy us and make it feed our roots." Sevens. Later that evening, I sat on the porch, the sky painted in pink and gold, holding an old photo of Robert and me. I whispered, "We did it, honey. We took our pain and made it matter." Sevens. The porch light flickered on, casting a warm glow over the yard. The magnolia tree swayed gently, petals catching the light like little promises. Looking back now, it's hard to believe how far I've come, from being a quiet widow afraid to speak up in her own home, to a woman who helped take down one of the largest elder fraud rings in the country. But here's the truth I learned through every sleepless night, every trembling breath, every hard choice. Evil doesn't always show up in the dark. It often walks in smiling, calling you family. Sevens. Jamal taught me that manipulation doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, "I'm doing this for your own good." And sometimes love, real love, means drawing a line and saying, no more. 7s, if there's one thing I hope you carry from my story, it's this. Your kindness is sacred, but it still needs boundaries. You can be loving without being used. You can forgive without forgetting. And you can start over without needing anyone's permission. When I think about all the people who wrote me after seeing my story on the news, the ones who said, "You gave me courage to speak up," I realize that survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about helping others find their voice too. So I'll ask you this. If someone tried to take everything from you, your peace, your dignity, your home, would you fight back, even if nobody believed you? Because that's what I had to do. And I'd do it again. If my story touched you, if it made you think about the quiet strength inside you, I want you to do 3 simple things. 7s. Like this video, so it reaches someone who needs to hear it. Comment below and tell me, have you ever had to stand up for yourself when no one else would? And share this story with someone you love, because you never know whose life it might protect. I'm Leticia Rowland, and I'm living proof that even when they try to silence you, your truth can still roar.